Do you remember listening to music in an Olive Garden when you're hanging out with your family or friends? Or even the music when you're on hold with a big bank or organization? Or even the music that you hear in an elevator as you're going up those many stories? Well, that mix of groovy rhythms and complicated riffs is what's known as jazz music. And while I'm sure you've heard of it, and while you also probably think it's complex, it's an art form just like all other forms of music. Now, jazz is something very common in our lives. It's something that is present in high schools and on street corners in those three examples I gave you before. And it brings people together through its conversational style. Now, jazz is also important to you because it's music too, just like hip-hop and rap that's gone underappreciated for some time. And while hip-hop and rap have gone to the mainstream, jazz hasn't. Now, why is that? We'll get into a little bit later. But what's more important about that is that all three of those have one thing in common. They all appeal to improvement in conversation, and they all have unique African-American roots. So why shouldn't jazz be in the spotlight? Well, we need a hero, somebody that's going to help us bring jazz to the spotlight. Who's that hero, you say? Jazz and Lincoln Center. They're stationed in Lincoln Center in New York City, and their main mission is to promote the diversity of jazz culture. So, hopefully by the end of the speech, I will convince you to help them out. But before that, we have to explain what jazz culture is, show why it matters, and then also show how our hero is helping the cause. Now, what's jazz culture first off? Well, it's jazz history. It's where did it come from? Jazz came from slave songs, African-American church songs, European classical forms from the French, Mississippi blues, and American military marches. More specifically, though, it started in New Orleans, Louisiana, with the first jazz instrumentalist being Buddy Bolden, who went on to influence greats like Louis Armstrong, who I'm sure you've heard of. Now, more on the history from Irina Pavlovic and her work, Preservation of the Jazz Culture, Its Roots and Traditions, which you can find on EBSCO hosts under Academic Search Ultimate. She says, the Afro-American music that we call jazz today has developed from folk and dance music of Afro-Americans under influences of diverse cultures and multicultural society. Now, what that means is basically jazz is super diverse. Now, why does this matter? Well, because jazz, just like America, is a melting pot, and on top of that promotes creativity as a form of democracy. Now, how is it a melting pot? Well, it's a melting pot because we put together all the stuff I was talking about before, the slave roots, African-American church songs, European classical forms, mix it together in a pot, boom, you get jazz music. Do the same thing over here with America. You get English influences, French influences, German influences, all those influences, mix them together in a pot, boom, it's America. So they're both synonymous as melting pots. Not only that, but jazz culture is also a smaller melting pot and the big American melting pot. And if we value America so much as a melting pot, why shouldn't we value jazz? Now, to help you understand how it promotes creativity as a form of democracy, let me tell you my perspective on it. In my 2.5 years of playing jazz trumpet at my high school, I found that I was mostly studying improv, which is when you make a solo up on the fly. And what I found was it really improved me and my classmates' creativity far beyond that of other arts. And on top of that, the call and response, the ebb and flow of the song became this harmonious, democratic conversation. It was a great celebration of music and diversity. It became, and that's what jazz is. It's a celebration. It's a harmonious, democratic conversation. And it's a lot like the extemporaneous style of speaking that I'm presenting you today. But now that we understand what jazz culture is and why it matters, let's explore how Jazz at Lincoln Center, our hero, is helping the cause. Well, their mission statement, which you can find on www.jazz.org, is to entertain, enrich, and expand a global community for jazz through performance, education, and advocacy. We're going to focus mainly on the education and advocating, but you'll see a little bit of hints of performance in there. Now, my first example is the Essentially Ellington High School Jazz Band Festival, in which top jazz high schools across the U.S. will perform, work, and compete with the best jazz musicians across the world. Now, more on it from their website you can find is that one of the schools here in local Champaign, Champaign Central High School, actually participated in the 2021 virtual festival. Not only that, but one of their students is now currently at Parkland. And you want to know what that means? That means that jazz culture has gone all the way through the high school, all the way up the ladder to college. It's everywhere, universal by place. Now, if you're not already convinced, let me give you a few more examples. My next two examples are from Jonathan R. Wells in his internship report for his master's degree in arts administration. Now, he says that from toddlers learning percussion through Weebop, an interactive educational program designed for children from ages 8 months to 5 years old, to lectures through Swing University, an adult educational program that teaches individuals how to be effective listeners, Jazz at Lincoln Center has developed educational programs for every generation of individuals interested in learning more about jazz. Now, what does that mean? Well, to summarize Wells, what he's saying is basically if you're a 15-year-old girl, an 8-month-old baby, a 60-year-old man, or a 100-year-old man, you can enjoy jazz regardless of your age. It's universal across age groups. except for maybe 7 months old, but they'll get there as they'll grow up. Now that we know how Jazz and Lincoln Center is helping the cause, how can you be a hero in your own community? Well, let me tell you. You can contribute in 2 major ways: donations, social media. You can donate to the Jazz and Lincoln Center Annual Gala on their website, www.jazz.org, with just $1 today, the equivalent of a large Coke at McDonald's to, in their words, help make possible the thousands of unique performances, educational programs, and resources produced annually by Jazz and Lincoln Center, which reach more than 2 million people across the world. That's a lot of people, right? Well, if all 20 of the people in my Common 103 class were to do this, that'd be $20 raised. They can convince one more person, 40. Get to 1 million people, it just grows exponentially to $1 million. All it takes is but a small spark. Now, if you don't have money, that's okay. Just take 2 minutes out of your day to follow, like, comment, share, subscribe. You're all familiar with it. On their content on social media. They're active on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Just search their name in the search bar, Jazz and Lincoln Center. Now that we know how to help our hero, today we've defined jazz culture, we've explained why it matters as a piece of American culture. We've explored how Jazz and Lincoln Center has promoted jazz culture through its main programs and mission statement. We've also labeled how you can help the cause and be a hero in your own community. So I hope this shows you why jazz is so important to America and how you could possibly help 2 million people globally just through your aid. I also want to remind you, jazz is music, jazz is American music. And it brings forth an excellent representation of diversity through its unique African American roots and its appeals to improvement and conversation. So please, for diversity, improvement, and conversation's sake, go out and donate just $1 today, or spend 2 minutes out of your day just to promote them on social media and any of those forms I listed before. Will you be our hero? Thank you.